$2.3 billion in deals. And the biggest lesson? It's not what you think.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. I'm Logan Freeman, your host with Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors. Today, we're joined by special guest and author Ken Ashley. And today's episode is going to be jam-packed with actionable insights on how to win and succeed in commercial real estate today. Like I say often, we host this show for one simple reason, that clarity beats noise. There is no shortage of headlines, opinions, predictions about commercial real estate. What's missing, in my opinion, is grounded, market-specific insight from people actually doing the work, listing the properties, leasing the properties, underwriting those deals, and closing them here in Kansas City and in the region and nationally. So we exist, this show exists to cut through the national narratives, explain what's actually happening on the ground, and help owners and investors and operators make better decisions with real data and real context. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you are watching on LinkedIn, please do drop your questions, comments into the chat bot. My team, myself, we are monitoring those live. And if you've got questions here that you want to ask Ken or myself, please bring them to the table. Really excited to say, we've been growing, Ken, and I'd love to talk to you about your team makeup over the years. But I'm really proud of the team that we've got here at Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors. I've had a lot of success with some folks and less success with others. But what I will say is having the right culture around you, a team of people that are pushing in the right direction and treating people right, really is important in this business. One of our past guests always say we're in the information, but we're also in the relationship business. And this slide here, I'm excited to say that Christian Rustick has recently joined our firm to really take over the multifamily side of our business, as well as working on the capital markets side. And super stoked for Christian to be on the team. So Christian, big shout out to you. Thanks for being here on the team. All right, into our guest for today, Ken Ashley. He's a tenant rep advisor with nearly 30 years of experience helping companies align their business strategies with real estate decisions. He represents clients nationwide in leasing and acquisitions and has completed over $2.3 billion in lease transactions. I'm going to ask if that's an updated figure, or Ken may have to give me some updated figures on that. But he's a perennial top producer in Atlanta and nationally at Cushman & Wakefield. He's a member of the Forbes Real Estate Council, former chairman of the firm's tenant advisory group. He's also an award-winning instructor with Cornet Global and founder of the CRE Summit. And he's focused on excellence in commercial real estate marketing and social media. I'm going to plug one thing here. I talk to a lot of people. It's my job on a regular basis. When speaking with Ken, it is very apparent that what you say is calculated, it's well thought out, and you put your words together very well. So just kudos to you on that front. I hope that you are one of the best communicators that I have heard in a very, very long time. You ask somebody a question sometimes and they're kind of rambling a little bit, but whenever I ask you a question, it's like you almost had the question before I even gave it to you. So I always say that, or my old coaches in football used to say that proper preparation prevents poor performance. And it's apparent, Ken, on a regular basis that you are prepared. So welcome to the show, Ken. We got you on mute right now.
We fixed that.
There we go.
It's kind of you to have me on today, and an honor to be on your air. Appreciate your kind words.
Absolutely, Ken. Well, I'm excited about the collaboration on the CRE Summit, which we will talk about here very soon. So I want to get into, brokerage from your perspective. I mean, my goodness, lots have changed in 30 years. But I've had guests on that have been in the business for 30, 40, 50 years. They've given me their opinions on what's fundamentally changed, but I'm curious to hear about your perspective in regards to what has changed from 30 years ago to where we are today. Let's just talk about that.
Sure. Well, just to take you back in time, 30 years ago, we had these things called fax machines, and we rubbed dots on maps, and the business was a lot slower. Before you had cell phones, before you had even email, if you can imagine that, we sent letters and we had couriers, and it was a different kind of business. There were some pluses. It was pleasant to sit down with the landlord and negotiate a transaction. But boy, there are a lot of pluses to today with tech stacks and the speed with which we can serve our clients and get deals done. I just think is amazing. I also think one of the big differences is how brokers worked back then. They had what I call the cornrow mentality, which is you walk down the row, your deals, and you didn't talk to anybody, and everything was a secret, and you didn't share any methods or best practices. It was a very secretive kind of profession back then. Well, we still, of course, protect client information. And I don't know that every broker has shifted, but we've certainly shifted to what I call an abundance mentality, which is sharing ideas, sharing best practices, because we believe iron sharpens iron. The competitive issue is not the idea, it's the execution of the idea. So I like our industry for a couple of reasons. One, the transactions are getting larger. The impact on those transactions on companies and people has never been more important. Think post-COVID use of office space or industrial. And then number three, the tech stack that allows you to both develop business and service business is getting better and better. And it just that turns my wheel for that to happen today.
A couple things that you said. The abundance mentality reminds me of this growth mindset that Carol Dweck put in her book called Mindset. And one of these deals where, and this is very apparent because right before this call, I was on another Zoom call with a young broker from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we were sharing notes on how we were compiling data on iOS sites in the United States. And he showed me his HubSpot that was integrated with Terracotta, and then Zoneomics, where he could pull the exact zoning. And there was nothing about that was like, man, I don't want you to take that. And I pulled up my Google map of all of the 957 properties that I'm tracking on a regular basis. I showed him how I'm tracking comps, and then putting them into GenSpark AI to have my own, large language model in regards to being able to analyze these deals in minutes instead of hours, right? And so this abundance mentality is absolutely something that I think I'm seeing with a lot of the younger brokers for sure. And, Dan Pink wrote a book called To Sell Is Human, and he basically wrote in that book, it was something along the lines that we've shifted from information asymmetry, where one group of individuals has all of the data, right? Like that's what you were kind of describing back 30 years ago. Like there was no data. I mean, that's what your business was, do you have the data to this shift of information asymmetry or to information parity, where the data is everywhere, right? And now it's how do you actually cut through the noise and weaponize that data in the right way? And it's really interesting to see that. So I love to hear about that abundance mentality for sure.
Well, Logan, I think you hit on something, and that is signal to noise. I remember when databases were first coming online, and now CoStar being the preeminent example, there was a lot of talk then, just like there is talk now about AI supplanting people, and did we need brokers anymore?
Yeah.
And it turns out the world is awash in data. And so data is great, but what we need is knowledge and wisdom to interpret that data. And here's the analogy I would use. Let's say you and I are working together and we're advising a client on a $100 million transaction. And the CEO's got to go to her board and present this idea. And we specialize in helping avoid CLMs. It's a career limiting move because we've taken the test hundreds and thousands of times. And that is, data can give you one element or one component of decision making and governance, but experience is another. Another example I would use, if you go in to have a medical procedure on your body, there may be someone who really has read a lot of books but never done one of those procedures. Bueno.
Not touching me.
Not touching me. No,
yeah. Yeah. Speaking of somebody who's had multiple surgeries from football injuries, I could show you a 4-inch scar on this shoulder, same thing on that shoulder, broken ankle, torn MCL, fingers all do that. Like I absolutely agree with you on that, Ken. Big shout out to Harry Arsene for showing up today. He says what worked before got you here, but it won't keep you here. I agree. I think brokerage is changing. That's a perfect segue into kind of our next topic, which is, commercial real estate going digital, right? And take us back to that moment when you were starting to curate the list that you were talking about with me previously, and when you started to see this big shift of commercial real estate and folks kind of going more digital.
Well, I think that's right, Harry, that what we've always done won't get us to where we need to be in the future. And so if you go back to the beginning of COVID, it was such a scary time for so many of us. And, it's March, April, and I'm making my buddy calls. And what I began to realize in those discussions is at that time, we were foreclosed on many traditional business development practices. You couldn't take someone to play golf. You couldn't take someone to dinner. I mean, it was just horrific. In addition to all the real things that were going on around the world, it was impacting our practices. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what were we going to do in the future. And I realized I didn't have to come up with all the answers. There are a lot of people in our industry who have great ideas. However, there was no source of truth. There was no lists. There was no real example. Now, Duke Long had done a list, and Duke's a good friend of mine. And he and I had a conversation about transitioning the list, which I appreciate. And I sort of remade it. And what I saw is something to be helpful to the industry. So the first list I spent a ton of time on. It was a Twitter list. And I did look at Duke's list, but I had some sort of different metrics. And so I'd go to Coy's page to see who he followed, who was interesting, who was contributing to the community. And so we were about ready to publish the first list. I hired a graphic artist, and he made a comment that changed everything. He said, "We should do a badge." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, if Logan is going to be on the list, let's put his face on there. Let's do a little badge that he can put it in social media and something that'll make his mom proud." I said, "Great, let's do it." So every list since, including that list, we've taken the time to create a badge, to send someone an email so that they know that they're on the list, so that they can celebrate this accomplishment should they choose to do so. And it's really helped push the brand of CREI. And by the way, CREI, I created the brand on 99 designs for $199. And the I is lowercase, in case you're wondering. I know the word influence can be a pejorative in many circles. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to influence for good. So the I is lowercase to connote servant leadership and influence.
Yeah. Well, I think that a few things that I've got there. Number one is seeing the trends. And I've seen that like the best folks in our industry, they have really great pattern recognition. And they almost feel early sometimes. And
Yep.
Being early is not easy. Right. And, 2.5 years ago, when I started to work with ChatGPT, I heard about it at one of my men's groups, Acumen groups, and people were like, "Do you know what this ChatGPT thing is?" And I was like, "No, I have no idea." And then I pulled it up and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to absolutely change the way that I operate." 2.5 years later, there's not probably a process within our organization that doesn't have some sort of efficiency building through artificial intelligence. And so, I think that pattern recognition is extremely important, but you've taken it another level. You've created a whole movement, a community built around influence and visibility and the future of brokerage, right? And I'm starting to really understand that, maybe even some smaller boutique brokerages can really carve out a really unique niche now because you have access to that data that we were talking about. But if you do it right online, you can get the same reach as some of the larger firms. And that's a really interesting perspective and shift that I've been seeing kind of in the industry. But talk to us a little bit more about the CREI movement and why not just a list, which, by the way, if you're on LinkedIn or any of the social medias this week has been flooded with posts. I can't imagine how much traffic has been generated from this week. I pull it up, I see another one every single day. So it's super exciting to see that. The badge obviously is working because people are sharing it, but talk to us a little bit more about the movement and the summit.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to. It was Coy Davidson again on it was a Thursday night in October of 2020. I'll never forget it. And I was having a glass of red wine and just looking at Twitter a little bit, and Coy tweeted, "Hey, it sure would be nice if we could get together." And he later said he meant to drink beer. I heard it a little differently, and so I hired an event planner that had been laid off during COVID. and undertook to get people together. And I will confess, just like a lot of entrepreneurial ideas, it was pretty high level. I didn't have a lot of planning around what it might look like. This thing has evolved significantly, but I wanted to go to Lake Tahoe, the first one, because I'd simply never been there.
Yeah.
And I got to do Advance, and I stayed at the Ritz-Carlton that night. And listen, they were in COVID and they were hurting. I don't know that I could afford them today, but I signed up with the Ritz-Carlton in Lake Tahoe and put up about 150 grand of my own money, just hoping that people would come. And I told my wife, I said, honey, we might get a shellacking here. We'll see.
Yeah.
And, sure enough, they had forest fires. We had COVID. We had all kinds of issues, travel, but 109 people walked in the room. And it was one of the greatest moments of my life that people would have trust and faith in this idea. And what immediately evolved during that first meeting was this sense of community, this abundance mentality that I've referenced, the friendships and the power in these relationships. And what I think people, certainly the people who have come all 5 and soon to be all 6 years, would tell you is they learn something new every year. And I wouldn't say you go necessarily for the reason to transact business, but business transactions do occur for sure. But I think the biggest thing is everybody that comes to the summit gets a workbook, and you go through the pedagogy, you go through the panels and the resources, but you're planning your own personal digital attack for Monday morning. So when you roll out of the conference, you've got the book, you've got the to-dos, you can get your team involved, and you can execute quickly and transform your practice. And what gets my propeller spinning is to see people like you, Logan, to see people around the industry taking these ideas and being successful. I've enjoyed my career, and I'm at a point in my career where it's more about impact. So I get excited when you do well and when others do well, Logan.
Absolutely. Well, bringing the top people around and the content creators in the industry to share what's actually working. That's why I'm going to be there. That's why I'm super stoked to be there. And not only that, to promote the event and get as many of my buddies and people that I know and gals. Buddies are boys and girls. Okay. So I'm not just, I work with a lot of amazing women. For 8 years, a woman has been by my side in this industry. She's probably listening in right now, Katie Cobb Sullivan. I would not be able to do any of what I can accomplish without her. So hopefully there's a lot of amazing women there as well at the event. I'm super stoked about that. And what you said, which is, I think, a great segue into our next one, but we do have a listener question in. So I'm going to pause on transitioning until we ask this. Thank you for sending this over to me. For brokers who are still leaning into content, right? Like they're trying to figure out what to do, how to get active. What are they missing out on that they may not even realize yet? And I've got my own 2 cents, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to let that question go to you.
Well, thank you, Logan. I appreciate it. So there are 2 things. Number one, think about the eyeballs. So in my case, the eyeballs are the CFO or head of real estate or chief human resources officer at a large American corporation.
Yeah.
And I think and I imagine in my mind's eye when I'm writing that they potentially are reading, and then they're going to stand up from reading this tweet or this post and walk into the boardroom and talk about trends. So that's the eyeballs are number one. Number 2 is defining your 4 corners. And your 4 corners will help and protect you and guide you through so much if you'll take the time to do them. I'll give you mine in a second. But they conclude what you will and what you will not talk about online. So here are my anything having to do with macro CRE. Nobody cares if you have a sublease in Philadelphia. So macro commercial real estate trends. Anything having to do with management science. So those executives, how to create better culture, achieve your goals, be a better leader. So think CFO.com, Harvard Business Review. Number 3, technology, because everyone is trying to improve their tech stack. So Logan, I know you've done a magnificent job in your tech stack, and people would love to hear more about that. And then finally, anything positive. So if a firefighter runs into a building and rescues a kid in Philadelphia, okay, that's cool because we all want positive stories. So that's the 4 corners. What's not in there: art, science, politics, history. I love all of those. And the one exception I want to put an asterisk on is Saturdays in the fall, the Georgia Bulldogs.
Fair enough. I do throw a Kansas City Chiefs post in every once in a while. mostly because they do have a massive economic interest here in the metro area. But, social media is no longer optional. I think content is a competitive advantage, and that window is absolutely still open. And here's one side benefit, I will just say. I know you can use AI to write everything, but we are to the point where AI slop is everywhere, and people can see it, and they're getting trained. Their eyes are getting trained very well. So if you can truly curate a way to create a message that is compelling, concise, and really pure, that's going to stand out. And number two is just communicating in general, right? Like there's this idea that this soft art of talking and discussing. Most of my business, like I can give an assignment to one of my team members and it's fully baked, and it's like the sign should go on the dotted line. But what happens between that component, that step, and actually getting somebody to take the next step is what actually needs to be transferred. And I have found through podcasts and doing Zooms and in-person meetings and writing, it is so much more, I become so much more fluent because of that. And it's getting the ideas out of your head and communicating them in a way that somebody else can really generate some actionable insights from.
Yeah, and Logan, maybe one more quick idea on content. So I keep a notebook. It's a digital notebook, and I go to lunch with executives or go to meetings and hear people talk all week long, and I write down snippets, interesting things that people say, and it's always anonymized to respect the privacy of people. But executives tell me really interesting things, and so I fashion those into messages that you might see in coming weeks out on X and other platforms. So you don't have to sit there all at one time and just pull it out of your head. Just pay attention to your interactions. So, let's say that you're an expert in, North Georgia real estate, and that's your focus and those are your eyeballs. Well, what are people saying about North Georgia real estate, and what are you learning as an expert? And I completely agree with you on authenticity. People care not about the data, but they care about what you think about the data.
Yeah.
You, as a professional, please don't do AI. It's so obvious. We know.
Yeah, and then long dashes, they show it pretty easily, right? Like I don't even know how to type a long dash. Okay, so well, Ken, you said what's most important in your career right now is impact and talking about legacy. So let's talk through your book, The Prescription. Why did you write the book? What's in the book, and what are people going to take away from it?
Well, thank you so much for the question. Another passion project that started during COVID, and I guess I mentioned enough to my wife. She's like, maybe you actually do this. And so for the better part of 2 years on Saturday morning, I sat down, I hired a book coach. This is not ghostwritten. This is not AI. This is me. But I did have someone who helped me craft the narrative. The book is designed to help people understand our wonderful, interesting, incredible industry, but it's pretty opaque. It's in 3 sections. The first section is from my chair, understanding commercial real estate. People want to compare it to Resi. That's an imperfect comparison. There are a lot of my friends in Resi who do very, very well, but it's a different business. It's apples and oranges. There's both fruit, but they're different kinds of fruit. The second describes from how to go sitting on your couch watching Netflix to getting hired. And if you're piqued in your interest in this industry, it's one thing to say, hey man, it would be cool to be Logan. It would be cool to work in commercial real estate, but it's another to find Logan and to understand what Logan is looking for. And we explain in the book for, I think, the first time that's been written about publicly about, for example, why is it so hard to find a job in commercial real estate if you're working for commission only, i.e. free? Well, there's desk costs. So we explain what that is. We talk about splits. We talk about what brokers can earn. Again, either not well written about or never written about before publicly. We talk about in that second section about what you should negotiate for with your senior broker, with your brokerage team. What kind of expectations should you have in your contract? There are over a dozen specific things that we talk about. And then finally, once you get hired, once Logan says yes, and it's the best day of your life, then the second best day of your life ought to be day one. What do you do to become successful? And in my opinion, how do you crack the nut in commercial real estate? How do you start earning fees? And so if we can get you over that cycle, if we can get you through the flywheel of success and get that flywheel spinning and make you an expert, it will transform lives. And I'll also say this, Logan, I firmly believe your success blesses others. And what that means is when you are successful, when you earn big commissions, your family's taken care of, your broker's taken care of, your teammates are taken care of, your client is taken care of. But here's another group. When you go to buy a new suit of clothes, or you go to buy furniture for your house, or you go to the restaurant and have a nice dinner, all of those are downstream people who are well taken care of because you did your job.
Absolutely. Well, definitely go check out the prescription. You could buy it anywhere. Amazon #1 bestseller. I'm excited to get into it. Now, I have to ask a question. Was the logo here on logo.com $199? Because that looks pretty cool.
That was a little different. I have a great team that designed the logo. We looked at probably 30 different versions of that. And the accompanying workbook has a slightly different logo, and I hope you'll pick up the workbook as well. It'll help you through the book.
Absolutely. Well, Brian S. Capo has a great question here. So we're going to bring that up. Brian, thanks for being here. Thanks for the question. He asks, are investors really looking at what a commercial real estate capital markets agent are posting, even if it's not their preferred agent? Great question. How would you respond to that, Ken?
Oh, I think it's all in bounds. And what I've known a long time is there are a lot of voyeurs on content. That's not a bad thing. I mean, there are a lot of people who are observing what's going on. I've talked to colleagues of mine, specifically in capital markets, where they know Wall Street is watching what they're saying.
Yes.
So, we all have friends in the business, but I want to look across a broad spectrum of what experts are saying. That's why we scroll through social media every day to get real-time info. So I think it's a wholehearted yes, Brian.
Yes, I second that opinion. And Brian, I have actually done business with multiple people off of LinkedIn that I didn't know previously, but they were giving insights into what was happening. And most of it was, here's what happened on a recent deal, right? And it's less of, hey, here's the market rates for today and all of that. It was, here's a problem, here was a challenge, and here's how we solved that, and here's what we're seeing in the marketplace. So I have personally done business with a lot of people that I didn't know previously that I found on LinkedIn. I've hired them. They've either found me and hired me. And so I think the answer is yes, but it also takes time, and it takes time to build that trust and authority on the platforms that you're on. So hopefully that was helpful. Brian, thanks again for asking that. And if you have any follow-up questions, reach out to Ken or myself. Definitely check out the CREI Summit, because I'm sure that'll be a big topic there as well. Okay, so moving on, I think we're going to pass this. I do want to plug that I first found out about Ken in reading a book that's sitting on my bookshelf here, Brokers Who Dominate. But you were featured in that book, Brokers Who Dominate. And I guess I'm not going to pass it because I do have to ask one question. What do you think that you were doing differently that puts you in the category to be in that selective group that was in that book? Because that is a book that I recommend on a regular basis.
Well, I appreciate the question. I can't get into Rod's mind as to why he selected, but I think one of the things we do is just in how we develop the ecosystem that is our clients and partners. And we do an entertainment event called Guns and Grits. We've done it for 10 years. It's a sporting clays event, and dinners and bluegrass bands. And what it allows us to do, I'm very proud of my Southern culture and Southern heritage, and allows me to show off this beautiful area of the country that I live in, and what we call the magic of the overnight event of getting people together. We're all kind of in this same world, and allowing them to spend time together, to have fellowship, and the fun things that come out of the 24-hour experience, and new relationships that are built, and actually the confidence that our clients have when they look across, they see who our other clients and partners are. They're like, man, this is a group I want to be with. So I think that was certainly part of it, is how we entertain. And then the systems-driven component. Greg Metcalf has joined us from another shop, and he and I talk every day about systems and accountability, point systems, Logan, which we can talk about if you want to. Knowledge work is difficult work. cut grass for a living, we immediately know what we've done at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
How do we build systems that tell us that we are headed in the right direction, not only day by day, but hour by hour? Are we doing the right thing to move the ship in the right direction?
Yeah. Wow. Knowledge work is difficult work. I'm just taking a mental note on that. Being an ex-athlete, I still call myself an athlete on the indoor rower for Concept 2, but I recently did a rowing championship, virtual summit. It was a lot of fun. But long story short, the scoreboard was right there, and I speak about this a lot. What winning looked like, you could get a response from that every Saturday morning, right? Even in practice, it's one-on-one. Did you win that battle? I was an offensive lineman, and so did you block the person that you were supposed to block, right? I tracked pancakes back in the day. How many times did I get my opponent on his back? And in this business, it is very difficult because you might go through a full day saying, "Oh my gosh, was that something that moved the needle for me?" So that's a really good point. It reminds me of Perry Marshall's book, Detox to Declutter. And in that book, as well as Naval Ravikant's Almanac of Naval Ravikant and his tweet storm, which put him into the stratosphere. Go check that out. It's fantastic. But they talk about this in that book, which is, this idea that you must allocate an hourly wage to your time in this business, right? And so I'll give a prime example of this last night. My wife calls me. She's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be home until 5. I need you to take care of dinner." Now, I had two choices. I could have stopped at the grocery store, picked up the ground beef, and made the smash burgers that I was wanting, or get on my app and order the food. And I was actually listening to Naval Ravikant's book. Well, it's Eric Jorgensen's book, but about Naval Ravikant. And he was talking about that he allocated a $5,000 an hour wage to himself early on. And I was like, okay, well, I got on DoorDash and I ordered the food, and I went home and I worked for another 2 hours, and I got a bunch of things done. So I think that's a pretty good example of that, what we're talking about here.
And Logan, I agree. And, I would just say to that I absolutely agree that there's an hourly assigned to each of us, and you have to decide what that is. And in the book, there's a way to unpack that hourly. However, when I get in front of my family this weekend over the holiday, that clock turns off. It is priceless. It does, If one of my kids calls and says, "Hey, Dad, I'm in trouble, I need help with," and it's a serious enough issue, the clock is immediately turned off. I don't think about my family in business terms. I think about my family in family terms.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Well, it reminds me of a top broker in Detroit, Steven Silverman. He's also a past guest here. Steven made it onto the top 10 on the CREI influencer list. And Steven often posts about this idea that, he has a really challenging time turning it off. So we were messaging back and forth last night just about that. And I said, you know what? I haven't figured that out, but I am interviewing a guy tomorrow that's been in the business for 30 years, and I'll ask him about that. So, Ken, with that, what are some of those tools and tips for somebody that, really doesn't work a W-2 job and can be working all the time? How do we stay present?
Well, it's an intentional focus, and it depends on where your kids are. My kids are grown now. When I'm with my kids, I'm present. There's some things that we can do, physical things that we can do that help us. First of all, take the phone off the table at the meal, put the phone away so that you're not tempted to look at it, because there's nothing more important in life than the people that you love that are in front of you. But second of all, my wife and I, wonderful wife, have been married 34 years now, and she's in the middle of a late night project. She's got a lot going on. So we'll permission each other to work in the evenings. It just as long as we have an explicit conversation about it, in the sense of, "Honey, it's okay. Go check your emails. Go do what you need to do." We don't sneak around and try to work after hours. We acknowledge that we need to work after hours and sort of permission that in. And then I think thirdly is helping clients understand that you have barriers too. And my clients are great. Generally 5:30, 6 o'clock. If somebody's reaching out to me, it's an all-fire emergency. But I don't really respond to emails after 6. And so you can train your clients when you're available digitally by how you interact. So I'm sure a lot of people listening do this. If something comes up and my wife and I are both working in the evenings, we permissioned into that, I will save emails till early the next morning. I certainly don't want to send emails on the weekend, and especially not on Sunday. It's too easy just to hit people that next morning. The last thing I want to do is send a message and have someone on my team thinking about a business problem when they should be focused on their family.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, we got another listener question in. Diane Sattler says, what other fields might you recommend networking to possibly getting closer to getting in the door? So, I mean, I guess this generally speaking, can speak to how you have worked your network into getting in, talking with these CEOs of these companies. And I could give my own perspective on this.
Well, I think initially, Diane, there are probably two things that I would think about. One is the cluster around the community in which you're in. So if you're serving the community, the not-for-profit boards are a great way to get involved. Harvey McKay wrote a book called Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And in that book, he talks about serving in not-for-profit boards. I'll fast forward to the end. The best place to serve is the governance committee, because you are responsible for vetting new board members. And even as a young person, you can go meet with senior people who want to join that board on a parallel level basis. You're not selling anything. You're in fact screening them. So not-for-profit work is a great way to do it. And then I think getting involved in associations where there's some kind of shared agreement. The Georgia Bulldogs Association here, or wherever your alma mater is a great way. So shared passions are powerful. And then number three, and finally, verticals. So I don't know about your practice, Diane, but let's just make this up and say that you're interested in serving law firms. So you're going to go to meetings and conventions and organizations that have to do with trade associations that have to do with law firms. Read everything, become the expert focused on that vertical. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really good. And I'll just add, I don't need to add much except for a quote from Aristotle that one of my early mentors gave me. And he said, Logan, in this business, sales, just marketing in general, you got to follow this rule. Aristotle said, you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them, right? And so I think that a part of this is, hey, well, what do you do, Diane? How do you answer that question? And how do you ensure that every person that you're meeting, you're able to plant seeds that they then can open up doors for you? And then I've seen this be extremely successful with a few folks in my industry here locally. They are the best connectors that I've ever seen. It's almost 50 to 60% of their job is connecting other people and generating that inbound. That has been unbelievable. And I can do so much better on that. But I've seen huge businesses be built by just being connectors.
Logan, I think you're spot on, bud. And now that I had a dinner last night connecting two people. So giving without regards to getting is a very powerful thing. And helping the kid get a job, helping someone figure out the medical procedure, helping people build their careers and businesses. Logan, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing just to have as a value in regards to this, because I don't go to the meetings that are like the speed dating meetings. I just don't. I'm just not going to go to them. I barely hand out a business card, to be honest with you. It is, I have treated people well for the last 10 years. And when they think of, hearing somebody about commercial real estate in Kansas City, they say, well, at least you should have a conversation with this guy, And so I think that's a good value to have. Now I got to ask a question. You've been around a lot of brokers in this industry. When you look at the top percentage, the top quartile, let's just say, that you've been around, what do you think that they're doing consistently that maybe other people aren't?
Execution. And I heard Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldog head coach. Sorry for so much Bulldog theme.
That's all right.
But Kirby gave a great talk one time, and he talked about in golf, thinking about coming into the Masters this upcoming weekend next, is they're all really, really, really good to be there on the field, and that's true in our industry. We're all really, really, really good at what we do. Some of this, as we know from watching the Sunday round at the Masters, there is a little bit of luck.
Yes.
To you, but the people that have the mental discipline to play through and to follow their training and to do what is right and not be distracted, those are the winners.
There's a quote from Alex Hermosi that says, "You can give away the secrets and sell the implementation." And I love that, because so many people are like, "Logan, you're so open with what you're doing." They say, "Aren't you worried that somebody's going to take that idea and run with it?" And I say, no. And the reason being is because even though they have the idea that might be complete at the theoretical level, they have to make it effective at the applied level. And a couple of my God-given talents are discipline, focus, achievement, and competition. And so execution is extremely important to me and for my clients. And I think that is something that reigns true today. You can go find the answers easier than ever. It's about the execution. So I loved hearing you say that, Ken. I completely agree. And then I have to say that your point about consistency being a winner is like, there's like this idea of the infinite game, right? Like if you roll a couple dice and, you roll a dice and you got to get a 6. If you just roll the dice more than somebody else, at some point you're going to roll more 6s than they are, right? And so it's like this staying power that I think is really important as well. So just a couple of my own 2 cents added in there. So thank you for sharing that, Ken. I appreciate that. From what you're seeing on the tenant rep side, I'd love to just get your opinion on what's a shift that you might be seeing happening right now that maybe other people aren't seeing. I'm seeing a lot of my friends in California say this is one of the hottest leasing markets that we have seen in a very long time. And, a lot of headlines might, contradict that, but what are you seeing out in the marketplace right now?
Well, in terms of the commercial real estate marketplace, the thing that a lot of us are beginning to see at the same time is that there's a coming crisis in office, in Class A, and really quality real estate. The issue is really 3 components. Number one, with some exceptions, we aren't building new office product in America for a while, and that's a longer discussion. I think you'll begin to see significant product deliveries in 2031, 2032, and 33. And then secondly, despite the headlines, we actually are seeing an increase in the number of knowledge workers and therefore the demand for quality, really high class office space. And then number 3, you've got companies that traditionally have either been downsizing or leaving. No one's leaving. No one's leaving the bar, and everybody wants a seat at the bar. So the natural result of that, we remember from economics, is supply demand. There's not a lot of supply. There's a lot of demand as prices are going up. And they're going up rapidly. Concessions are going down. So if you're a tenant or if you're advising tenants, time is your friend. Get going now. Get going with a lot of time to try to get transactions done. Help will eventually come. They call them cycles for a reason. But we're about to be in a lot of markets across America in a real office crisis.
So interesting to watch. And, the other component of that is Lightbox and Manus Clancy do a great job giving out weekly commercial real estate digests. I just absolutely love listening to that podcast. It's so timely and great. But what they are seeing is a 48% higher office to conversion ratio in big metro areas, mostly New York City. I will just put it out there like that. But that was something 2 years ago that people said, this isn't feasible. The costs don't work, right? And now they are up 48% year over year in regards to office to residential conversions. So that was another trend that I think is kind of interesting to see. And, we wonder kind of if that's going to continue to happen in Kansas City. It's a little bit different of a downtown market, obviously, than New York City. But one thing that has been catching my eye out there is the idea that something that needs to happen or should happen, but it's not economically feasible. People that took that bet 2 years ago are now delivering product into a really good market. So just always things that kind of blow my perspective open and keep my mind open to different ideas. Wanted to share that as well. Well, as we wrap up here, Ken, let's talk about the CREI Summit that's coming up in September. I'm excited to be there, but who should attend the summit?
Sure. So if you're an at-risk deal maker, meaning you're commissioned or largely commissioned in your career, and you're looking to transform your practice and put real tools to work. And you're looking to develop, more, even importantly, relationships with people that you can stay in touch with, that you compare notes with. You, Logan, and other great leaders in our industry will be there. And as I said, we really work hard as a team to make sure they're practical outcomes. This is not a college lecture. This is how are we going to go to battle in our markets on Monday morning. But second, we believe in fun. We start with social, we end with social. And so if you're a fun kind of person, we'd love to have you attend. We're seeing an increasing number of, in addition to brokers, real estate developers. Our mutual friend, Zach Molzer, will be there large and in charge. And, so if you're adjacent to the industry, but you have anything to do with sales or business development, then this can be a conference for you. And Savannah is lovely this time of year, and I think it's going to be a very memorable, I believe in etch memories and making fun experience. This is going to be one of those.
I'm bringing the whole family, Ken. So
That's right.
We are going to be out there hanging out, spending some extra time in Savannah. It is a place that we have always wanted to go to. And so I am super excited to be there and help promote the event. I can just speak to, like, I don't go to very many events, and the folks that are signed up, the folks that are speaking, you're going to make great connections and you're going to learn a lot. I just am so much about this abundance idea to expand my brain in regards to new ideas, and excited to see what other people are doing out in the industry. So head on over to CREISummit.com. You can find it all over the internet, CREISummit.com. Okay. So, Ken, we got to get into my favorite section. All right. This is my favorite section that I always ask everybody. So let me get this pulled up real quick. Make sure I've got this up correctly. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties.
While you're pulling that up, let me just say we're a volunteer-driven movement at CREI, and there are 38 volunteers working on this. So when you see a volunteer around industry, we're just so thankful. We're powered by volunteers in this passion project.
Absolutely. Well, Quinn, thank you for saying that. Phenomenal guest. I couldn't agree more. Great insights from you both. He's going to drop a couple more knowledge bombs for us here. So, Ken, favorite book or podcast that you're reading or have read?
Well, maybe one of both. So What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro. Joe's a retired FBI special agent. He's an expert in nonverbals. And so he helped figure out who were spies and bad guys based on their nonverbal language. What Everybody Is Saying is a New York Times bestseller. I've met Joe in real life. It was terrifying because I knew he could say everything. He could see everything that I was thinking.
Oh, man.
So that's a great read. And then podcast has to be, in addition to yours, has to be Chris Powers, So-Called Powers podcast. Chris, a good friend. I think he does a really great job of unpacking both real estate and entrepreneur types.
Yeah. Awesome recommendations. Appreciate that. Let's move on to what's one daily habit that you never miss, no matter how busy you are.
The gratitude audit. So waking up in the morning and just taking a few moments to write down the blessings, because everyone on this earth, everyone listening to your air, there are gremlins in your head. There are people and you imagine that people are saying things about you. You imagine that people are picking at you or saying negative things, or that you're an imposter, or you can't get all the negatives. And so focusing on the positive and the manifestation of that is something like this, which is, the white are the positive blessings in your life and the red are the negatives, and all you can see are the red. So writing out the top 10 blessings in your life, even if they're a repeat, is a positive thing.
An attitude of gratitude. Absolutely. My children, every day we try to ask 3 questions on the way to school. One is it's 2 comments in one question. We're not going to give worry, pain, anxiety a voice today. We're not going to give up. Those are the 2 comments. And then number 3 is, what are we grateful for? And we try to go through that every single morning when we're driving to school. And I can just see them hop out of the car and they're excited. I'm grateful to be here at school. I'm like, well, I'll talk to you in 5 years and see if you say the same thing. But it's so important to remember the gratitude component every single day. Okay, so last question. What's one piece of advice that you might give your younger self starting in commercial real estate?
Well, if we can, just divide it into two. So the first is, I remember the incredible lack of self-confidence, anxiety and concern, fear of failure that I had in the beginning. And just know, if you surround yourself with the right systems, with the right information like this podcast and books, that you will be successful if you do the work. You have to believe in yourself. And when you make the calls, you can get it done. It will happen to you. You have to remain committed to yourself and to your success, and vanquish those gremlins in your head. But the second thing you can do for yourself is something that it took me a while to learn, which is control your debt. You don't need to have the fancy car, the fancy meal, the fancy everything until you can afford it. And, showing off for others when you don't really have it, faking it till you making it, is really not a financial success strategy at all. And if you can keep hay up in the barn and your debt low, you will have great confidence, and you will be able to run through doors and go get business.
Love that. Ken, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. I appreciate you sharing all the insights. It was very apparent by the folks that tuned in today that you've got a great following and a lot of insights to share. So if folks want to learn more, we have put up the website for the summit, CREISummit.com, but any other place you would like them to go and sign up or follow you on?
Aren't you kind? So theprescription.pro, like professional, theprescription.pro is the website. It's got a pharmacy in there. It's playing on the theme. And we're going to keep adding free tools there for folks. There'll be an audible version of the book available shortly. And then on any social media you like, X being one of the great ones, at Ken Ashley.
Wonderful. Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. And if you're interested in speaking to myself or anybody on my team about Kansas City commercial real estate, just head on over to www.mwcreadvisors.com. I am a Missouri boy, and so I always say W. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse with our special guest today, Ken Ashley. We'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.